Thankful for Heather and how the Lord has used her to put together their ministry and music publishing, and I trust you're looking forward to getting to know her and the group next Sunday. All right, let's turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, we are moving from chapter 8, and that was about 5 parts in chapter 8. Now as we move into chapter 9, we see a similar yet different focus that Solomon is taking. Last year, as I was reclining in my chair and reading a book on a warm day at the beach, I found myself deeply breathing in the salt air, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the gentle breeze on my skin, feeling relaxed, and thinking, this is the life. If only life could be like this every day. Have you ever asked yourself what makes a full life? You ever given thought to that? What would be your definition of living a full life? Does God want me to live a full life? How would God define it? Well, I want you to think about this. Of all people on this earth, believers should be living the most joyful and fullest of lives. You may be sitting here this morning in total agreement with that statement, but saying, yes, Pastor, but are you living in the same broken world that I am? It would be much easier if God made it clear. If only there were a book of the Bible written by a man living in a broken world who defines the difference in perspective and practical living between a believer and an unbeliever living in that world. Well, if you haven't figured it out already, welcome to Ecclesiastes. And why is this study so important? Because it should be teaching you to understand your unsaved neighbor, friend, or coworker, and how they think and live the way that they live, and why and how you should be living distinctively different from them. They should be observing you going through the same broken world, yet filled with joy and living the full life that their soul truly desires and is seeking after. And we've spent the last several weeks walking through Ecclesiastes chapter 8, where Solomon taught us what it looks like to live joyfully and wisely under the pressures of a broken world. And I appreciate this section of wisdom and insight, because Solomon, he doesn't sugarcoat, but gives a full view of living under imperfect rulers, dealing with delayed justice, and facing life's unanswered questions. Yet within that tension, we saw that wisdom that brings joy gives us strength in verse 1 of chapter 8. It helps us submit with discernment in verses 2 through 5. And anchors us when God's justice seems delayed in verses 10 through 13. And then Solomon closes chapter 8 by urging us to humbly trust God's providence, even when we can't see the full picture. We see that in verses 16 and 17. Life is unpredictable, and we won't have all the answers, but wisdom teaches us to walk by faith and not by sight. And now as we turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, Solomon brings that same realism, but shifts the focus. He moves from how to live joyfully in wisdom to how to live a full life in wisdom. Look at verses 1 and 2 with me. He says, "For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. All things come alike to all." There's one event to the righteous and to the wicked. Now, as he opens chapter 9, Solomon gives us a connecting statement of stability that is foundational for any who would live life joyfully and for any who would live a full life. He says, I took all these things to heart and pondered them deeply so that I could attempt to bring clarity to all of it. He says, here's the truth. God is in control, and there is nothing that happens outside of His knowledge. In other words, if we are going to live and we're going to find joy and fullness in this life, we must trust God. Then he reminds us that even though death is certain for all and life is unpredictable, that truth should not lead us to despair, but to urgency, to clarity, to joy. And so if chapter 8 taught us how to live in uncertainty with joy and wisdom, chapter 9 shows us how to live a full life with purpose, delight, and reverence in the face of mortality. The message is simple, yet profound. You only get one life. I remember when Paige got her learner's permit. Maybe you, as a parent, have been through that as well. If you haven't yet, you have some fun to look forward to. I did with her what I did with Drew. When she came out of the BMV, I gave her the keys and told her to drive us home. Now, I'm going to reveal to you a big difference between my kids. When I did it with Drew, he threw the keys back at me and was like, "Dad, I can't do that. I've never driven before." And that gave me great comfort because I learned that Drew, although loving an adrenaline rush, was calculated and cautious about his approach to life and experiences. The drive home was great because he listened very closely to all my instructions and did it exactly as I explained. I'm alive today, right? But Paige, and some of you have met Paige, Paige was like, "Okay, YOLO." Y'all know what that means, right? Does everybody know what that means? Okay, if you don't know what that means, you're probably officially old. Or you're like a Gen Z and it's completely out of your vocabulary now. You only live once. I knew then that Paige's approach to life was very different. I think that's why she bungee jumped off the tallest bridge in South Africa. This had the potential to be a very interesting drive home. Let me tell you, we took every back road that I could think of. And yes, we made it home safely, and she did a good job. But we approached her driving a little differently than we did Drew's. The truth is, you only get one life. Don't waste it. Live it fully. Live it joyfully. Live it for God. In a world that's broken and often confusing, God invites us not just to endure life, but to embrace it with wisdom, faith, and gladness. And so today, we'll see in chapter 9 that the certainty of death doesn't cancel the simple beauty of a full life. Rather, it highlights the urgency to live with eternal priorities, to enjoy God's gifts, and to orient every part of our life around His glory. And so how do we live a full life in a broken world? Well, Solomon in this chapter is going to give us 5 practical insights. Let's look at the first. And that is, recognize God is in control. Trust Him. You see it there in verse 1. Look at it again. For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works, what? Are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. Consider this. Life is uncertain, but God is sovereign over the just and the unjust. Think about it. For us, life is uncertain. Why? Because we live here, right? We live on a temporal plane, a plane that is determined by time and space. God lives here. He sees all. He knows all. The past and the future and the present are all the same to God. Why? Because He's eternal. So the best way to interpret this insight of recognizing God is in control and trusting Him is with 3 precepts. Number 1, God is in control. Number 2, God has a plan. Number 3, when trials, tragedies, and injustices strike, go back to number 1 and number 2. Think about this. When you follow the faithful characters in Scripture, you see them living this out. What did Joseph say to his brothers? You remember as they were standing there before him, fearing that Jacob, their father, had passed, and they're afraid of what Joseph's going to do. And here Joseph says, "You meant this for evil, but God meant it for what? Good." We see in him a life that trusts God through each triumph and tragedy. And so, where do you turn when tragedy, trial, or injustice falls? When you find yourself longing for fulfillment, joy, or the path to a full life, whose wisdom do you follow? What stabilizing truth do you cling to? What truths are filtering your thoughts, emotions, and choices? Job said this, "In His hand is the life of every living thing." Paul reassured the Roman church, God works all things together for good to those who love Him. I love what Leo says in his commentary. He says, life's seeming unfairness must be filtered through the certainty of God's control. Beloved, we don't know what lies ahead. We don't know whether tomorrow will bring good or bad, as Solomon has written. We can't see it, but God does, and He has a plan for you. And that ought to give us great calm, assurance, and joy. I love what Achan said. He said, our deeds and destinies are in His hands, even when it doesn't feel that way. Have you ever been there? It doesn't feel that way. How do you react when it feels like the wheels are flying off of life while doing 80 miles an hour? How do you react when you're hit with something totally unforeseen? Do you seek the path of least resistance? Do you try to find escape? Or do you trust the God that has a plan? Maybe you've heard this illustration before, but it's so appropriate. A man once found a cocoon of a butterfly in his garden, and he was fascinated by it. He watched it closely for several days, and one morning he noticed that there was a small opening. And the butterfly inside was struggling to force its body through the hole. And after a long while of watching and waiting, he grew impatient. He thought, well, surely the butterfly is stuck. And wanting to help, he carefully took a small pair of scissors and snipped the cocoon open. The butterfly emerged easily. But its body was swollen and its wings were small and shriveled. Well, he waited, hoping that the wings would expand and the butterfly would fly, but they never did. The butterfly could only crawl. Its wings never developed properly. You see, what the man didn't realize was that the struggle to emerge through the narrow opening was God's way of forcing fluid from the butterfly's body into its wings. It needed the pressure and resistance of the cocoon to prepare it for flight. And in trying to help, the man had unintentionally taken away what was essential for the butterfly's growth. You know, sometimes the very struggles we try to escape are the means by which God strengthens us. You see, friend, escape isn't always the answer. Always looking to the path of least resistance is far worse on our lives than walking with God through the fire. You remember the 3 Hebrew children? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And what did they tell the king? We will not bow. And it doesn't matter if we'll be thrown into the furnace, because our God will either choose to deliver us, but if we perish, we perish. Nebuchadnezzar in his fury threw the 3 men into the fiery furnace. And to his shock, what does he see but 4 men walking in the flames? And he says, what? The 4th looks like the Son of God. And it's interesting as you follow that narrative that you will find that when they looked on the men as they brought them out and they looked on the 3 men, their hair was not singed, their clothes were not burned, but there was one thing that they carried into the fire that they didn't carry out of. Do you remember what that was? It was the ropes that bound them. You see, beloved, it's better to walk through the fire with God than to seek escape. I have to ask myself, what strength am I losing? What lesson am I missing by trying to find the easy way out? How am I harming my spouse or my child or my friend or acquaintance by trying to remove the pain and struggles of their trial? Oh, but they're suffering. I don't want to see them suffer. Is this really what God wants me to do? Is it really the right thing for me to seek escape? Is it really the right thing for me to step in and just remove the pressure of the testing that may be going on in my child's life or my spouse's life or in the life of a friend? Romans 5 says this, we glory in tribulation, also knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And just like the butterfly, we need the pressure of trials to build spiritual strength and faith and maturity. So get this, if we are going to live life to its fullest, you must grasp this first insight and recognize that God is in control. Trust Him. Submit your life to the sovereign God who alone holds the future. That is foundational. Beloved, chapter 8 in chapter 9 will do you no good if you won't grasp that insight and live it. And so living fully starts with trusting that God is in control, even when life feels out of control. But there's another truth that we must face if we're going to live fully, and that is life doesn't last forever. And that brings us to the second insight Solomon shares, and that is, don't waste your life. Death is certain. We see in chapter 9 and verses 2 through 6 where Solomon now delves into this, and he begins it with all things come alike to all. He says there is one event unto all. Think about this, beloved. Death comes to all. Don't waste time living in sin or spinning your wheels in trivial pursuits. Solomon gives us both reason to pause and reason to be encouraged in these verses. I want you to look at them with me, because the reason to pause we find in verses 2 and 3, and that is that everyone shares the same fate. There's a repeated phrase in these two verses, and I want you to underline them, and I've helped you out by putting it up here so that you can see it. All things come to all. In other words, it all happens the same way. Everyone shares the same fate. We find again, verse 2, one event happens. And then we see it again in verse 3. One thing happens to all. But I want you to underline the next phrase in verse 3. They go to the dead. And this is what I did in my Bible, in my study. I drew a line from all of them to that last phrase. It's a reminder. Do you get the point? We all need to face our own mortality. For some, that's a scary thought. I'm not a fan of Woody Allen, but he made this statement. He said, I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. But truly, it is better to consider death now rather than when it is sprung upon you, or when you hit a midlife crisis. Listen, dear friends, this is not just for the old to consider. The graveyard is filled with babies and toddlers, elementary age, teenage, 20-somethings, 30-somethings. Death is certain. And understand this, death is not your friend. You see at the beginning of verse 3, Solomon calls it an evil. Look at the beginning of verse 12, where he says, for man also knoweth not his time. And he goes on to describe death this way: as fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared. What is he saying? Everyone shares the same fate. No one escapes it. And Solomon makes that clear. Look at verse 2. All things come alike to all. There's one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean, and to the unclean, to him that sacrificeth and to him that sacrificeth not. As is the good, so is the sinner. And he that sweareth is he that feareth an oath. There is an evil among all things that are done under the sun. that there is one event unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live. What's Solomon saying? He's saying it doesn't matter if you are good or bad, a nice person or a mean person, a philanthropist. You know what a philanthropist is? Someone who looks out for all kinds of needs and gives their wealth to that. Or a selfish materialist. Doesn't matter if you're living a clean life or a debauched life. Now, it is nice because many times I see eyebrows raised when I go into the doctor and they ask all the standard questions. Do you drink? No. Have you ever drank? No. Do you smoke? No. Have you ever smoked? No. Do you do drugs? No. Have you ever done drugs? No. That gets some raised eyebrows in our society now. But the truth is, clean life or debauched life, still the same fate. Church-going folk or not church-going folk. I love the statement, the vow, and one who is afraid to vow. That's the idea of a YOLO person or a cautious, calculated person. We all die. I want us to understand from these verses just a couple more things about death that are noteworthy. Look again at verse 3. Because we find here that we have a serious strike against us. Solomon says, yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live. And after that, they go to the dead. And so Solomon says, it doesn't matter who you are, death is your fate. And he goes, oh, by the way, even worse for us all, we have a wicked, corrupt, broken heart. And beloved, that heart will drive us to death without preparing for eternity. It will distract us. Oh, pay no attention to God, our heart says. You can figure out life on your own. Follow this pursuit or that. Perhaps you will find meaning there. Our heart will deceive us. There's plenty of time to deal with eternity. Or God can't satisfy or please you like these things will. Or you're really a good person. Surely God wouldn't send you to hell. But the truth is, it won't just distract us or deceive us. Eventually, it will damn us. You see, if we live by the philosophy of this world, follow your heart. Right? We hear that today. Oh, follow your heart. No. What does the Bible say? The heart is deceitful. It's desperately wicked above all. Who can know it? But if we follow that philosophy, beloved, it will turn us from the truth that Jesus is the only way. And it will follow its own wicked, selfish desires. And when death comes, it will be too late. Hebrews tells us, and as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. And so, beloved, we have a strike against us because we have wicked, evil hearts. We are all sinners. And we are all deserving of God's demand for justice. And our heart will deceive us if we let it. Best to deal with eternity now. To be assured of your eternal destination now. Because when we stand face to face with God, it's already settled. I want you to understand this as well. And as I was going through this, my heart was drawn this way because we have seen since 2020 a skyrocketing of people who take their own lives. And I want you to understand this, that death is not the easy way out. I want you to look what Solomon says in verse 5, because he gives us this list of things that we need to understand about death. The first thing he says is the dead know nothing. You see, suicide ends your chance to experience God's grace of life's healing and joy. You see, once someone dies, they no longer engage with the living world, Solomon says. And the truth is, and I hope that this may help you in facing this. Maybe you know someone who has these kind of thoughts, but it may seem like an escape. But it cuts off every opportunity for change or restoration in this life and leaves people behind struggling to find resolution. It's over. The dead know nothing. They aren't attached to this life anymore. Solomon also says the dead have no more reward. Think of this, suicide ends your chance to receive what life could still offer. Listen, God is always good, even when it doesn't feel that way. Friend, death ends every possibility of future blessings, accomplishments, or unexpected joys. Remember, the butterfly had to struggle. Remember, the 3 Hebrew children walked through the flames. Remember, beloved, God is in control, and He has a plan. Solomon goes on to say the dead are eventually forgotten. Listen, you matter now. Don't believe the lie that no one will care or that somehow you being gone will forever impact the world. I'm not trying to be unkind or brash. But think about this earnestly in your heart of hearts. Death doesn't make someone more valued or more remembered. People are going to grieve. But life goes on. And the memory of a person fades with time. Listen, while you're alive, you can still build meaningful relationships and leave a lasting impact. And then he says this, the love, hatred, and envy of the dead will die with them. Think about this. Your emotions won't last forever. But your choice to live can lead to God's grace and healing. Understand this. Feelings of pain, anger, or despair may feel overwhelming, but they are temporary. Doesn't feel like it now. Doesn't feel like it in the midst of the fire. And the truth is this, circumstances don't have to determine outcomes. We live in a society that teaches us that. Oh, because you had this life as a child, or you were treated this way as a child, it means that when you get to this point in life, you're going to be just the same. Or you're going to have these problems. No, beloved, circumstances do not have to determine outcomes, by the grace of God, anyone can overcome. You see, death ends all feelings for you and for whatever it is that's plaguing you. And suicide many times changes nothing of the problem that you're trying to escape, and many times makes things worse for those you leave behind. And finally, he says this: the dead no longer have a share in anything under the sun. As long as you're alive, you can still see God's grace change what is bothering you. But death cuts off all involvement in the world. Suicide stops your story before you can experience the grace of God to change it. Understand this: life is a one-time journey with eternal consequences. It's sacred and limited. We only die once. So life needs to be lived with purpose. Suicide, beloved, does not skip judgment. Ending your life early does not end accountability before God. But this is a wonderful thing. Hope is available now. As long as you are alive, there's time to turn to God, receive grace, and live with purpose, which brings us to the next thought. Look at verses 4 through 5. For him that is joined to all the living, you see what he says? There is hope. You say, oh, Pastor, you don't know my life. Solomon says, oh, yes, I do. Think about it. He says, for a living dog is better than, and we see some of Solomon's comparative wisdom here, a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die. Why is there hope? Because when you walk with, fear, and obey the commandments of Almighty Sovereign God, you have the confidence that He sees, knows, and has a plan for all you encounter. Life is no longer a drudgery, it's an adventure. You know, it's a whole different approach. When you're driving down the road, and you have 26 people in a bus, and you're an hour out from the airport, and your flight is in an hour and a half from that, and the bus blows a tire. How are you going to look at it? Well, you can look at it as an absolute mess, and I can't believe I have to face this, and what is going to happen, and this is just horrible. Or you can say, okay, life's an adventure. What's God going to do now? How's He going to fix this? How's He going to move me? How's He going to guide me? You see, Solomon says it's better to live unappreciated, unliked and unknown, basically, than to be dead and famous. You know, the dog was not a loved animal in that culture, but the lion was seen as a majestic animal. But Solomon brings the truth right down to us. Which would you rather be, a dead lion or a living dog? As long as we're alive, we know that God has a plan and purpose for us. Oh, Pastor, I don't know why I'm still here. God does. He has a plan for you, and He has a purpose for you. You don't have to be well known and loved by all. You don't have to be the life of the party. You simply need to walk with God in fear and obedience. That will bring a full life. Verse 5, we see him give us this, that you still have time to live a fulfilling life. The living know that death is coming. Wiersbe said, knowing we'll die should motivate us to live with urgency and purpose. Kidner said this, even the best lives end, so live meaningfully now. You know that death is inevitable, so plan for it. Well, what if I die tomorrow? My life's a mess. What if I die tomorrow? Make the changes today to live life fully, and you won't regret it if you meet death tomorrow. Live life to its fullest. We're going to see how to do that when we get to the 4 imperatives down in verses 7 through 10. Solomon gives us 4 imperatives of a full life. But beloved, plan for eternity. Once eternity comes, it is too late to make any changes. And what we do in this life drastically impacts eternity. Remember Hebrews 9:27. And as it is appointed unto men, what? Once to die, but after this the judgment. Are you ready to stand before God? Remember as well Matthew 6. You remember what Jesus said, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth where moth and rust doth corrupt and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Are you investing in eternity? Where does this leave us? Right back at our insight, don't waste life. Live today like it matters, because it does. Consider these final words from Scripture. Psalm 90. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. Are you numbering your days? Isaiah says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto the Lord, and he will have mercy upon him. And to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. So where does this leave us? It leaves us in a broken world where death is the great equalizer, where the righteous and the wicked die alike, where the outcomes of this life are uncertain, and where, apart from God, all can seem meaningless. But Solomon has brought us here to a place of clarity, not despair. He shows us that our lives are in God's hand. That's the starting point. We're not floating through time and chance. We're being held. We're not victims of fate. We're in the grip of a sovereign God who sees, who knows, who governs, and who loves. And because of that, God is sovereign. And because life is short, we are called to live wisely and joyfully now, not later. Not when things get better, but now. How can you do this? How can you live this kind of full life in a world so broken and uncertain? Only through Christ. He came into our broken world. He faced death and conquered it. He's the one who is greater than Solomon. He is wisdom in the flesh. And through his death and resurrection, he has removed the sting of death and filled our lives with purpose that touches out into eternity. So today, if you know Christ, live with confidence. Rest in God's hand. Rejoice in his gifts and live life fully with purpose. Listen, if you've been hanging on to the reins of your life, Give them back to him. Walk with him in fear and obedience and know a full life. But if you don't know Christ this morning, this passage is a sober warning. The living know that they shall die, verse 5. But the greater question is, what then? What then? Are you ready to meet the God who gave you life? And I would encourage you, if you're in that place where you're saying, I'm not ready to meet God, I don't know what eternity holds for me, you can turn to Christ this morning, and he will welcome you with open arms. He will forgive your sin, and he will, by his grace, begin to make you whole so that you can know a full life as well. Will you bow for prayer with me as we consider what we've looked at this morning? I would ask you to look into your heart. How's the Spirit of God speaking to you? These insights that we've looked at, trust God. Recognize that God is in control. Don't waste your life. Are you sitting here this morning wasting your life? You're trying to control it. You're pulling the strings. I encourage you, believer friend, give it back to him. You're here this morning and you can't figure out life. You don't know Christ. Listen, you can come to him today. Maybe God's knocking on your heart's door, even right now. You know what you can do? Tap the shoulder of the person beside you and say, hey, God's speaking to my heart. Will you help me? Will you pray with me? You know what? That person would be thrilled to help you, and if they can't, they will take you to somebody who can. But beloved, let's not leave today living a life that is miserable, but living a life that is full. That's what God wants for each one of us. As we go into the final verse of invitation, I'm going to ask the men if they would come and prepare for the table.